For our Ascension Sunday sermon, I've invited members and friends of this congregation to reflect on what it means for Christ to ascend and for us to remain. The angels ask the disciples, essentially, why are you looking up? The mission field, the life that we're called to live out, is not spent with eyes gazing upward, but eyes level out into the world. There is a certain attraction to the glow of heaven, of bright lights.
No! Harry, no! Don't look at the light!
I can't help it. It's so beautiful.
But that's not where we're called to live out our faith. No. The Now What sermon series reaches its finale this Sunday. Jesus has ascended and we are here. So now what? Let's hear what our folks have to say.
When I think of this passage, I think of the disciples standing there looking up, not out of a sense of being left behind, but perhaps out of a sense of awe, because they are being entrusted to carry on the work of Jesus. They're the ones who are being commissioned to be sent out to care and love and share and heal and listen, doing the work of Jesus, spreading the glory, the mercy, and the grace of God. What an amazing thing. And what's so amazing is that we stand there and look up because we're almost shocked that we're trusted so much. And when we think about those things that we're to be doing, it's the things that we're already doing. The picking up the phone and calling a friend just to check in. The taking a meal to someone who lives alone. Perhaps it's doing dishes when you weren't asked. Or it's taking care of the dog or the cat in our case. It's all those things that we do every day for one another that show the mercy and grace of God. God is with us to help us, not only to persevere, but to flourish in all that we do. And God intends us to be committed to the world and to all that dwells within.
On the way to see my dying mother, I finally put down my book and realized what I wanted on this trip was to connect to my mother. So I read her the notes I'd made to prepare for writing her eulogy, and I saw in her eyes that she felt truly heard and seen. That connection with someone's soul here and now was a meeting with Christ.
As I reflect on the last 10 to 12 weeks, it is something I would never have thought could happen in my wildest dreams. It has been challenging, filled with long days and long nights, tragedy and war zones unfolding before us, unknowns everywhere with no clear answers. However, as I think about Ascension Sunday, I believe we are to consider what we can do right here, right now on earth to reflect God's will and His love, to carry out the Christian faith, hope, and beliefs that Christ died for. So in all this tragedy and conflict, I see the silver lining. I have seen collaboration, creativity, and caring that would never have unfolded without COVID-19. Although we had fun family plans before the pandemic hit, and they didn't quite pan out as we had hoped, we have had new precious moments that will be branded into fond memories forever. We've pulled out old board games to play. We pulled out old picture albums and revisited fond memories. And we've had discussions about what really matters, providing food for those in need, sending notes to those who are in isolation, having Zoom meetings to catch up with old dear friends, and calling people to ensure that they are safe. I am no technical guru, but have enhanced my capabilities, texting, Zoom, and many other ways, which has enabled me to connect with others and to finally find a way to give them virtual hugs when the real ones are not possible. So I would encourage all of us on this Ascension Sunday to live as God and Jesus would do, right here, right now on earth, rather than looking up to heaven for the answers. Exude hope, peace, and love, and as my dad always said, keep the faith.
Sitting outside here underneath the sky, I thought it was the right place to talk about heaven and sky. Looking up and seeing clouds tonight, but sometimes in the morning when I walk to work, I see the sunrise, the colors of the sunrise, and the sunset to the west on evenings where the colors intersperse with clouds in the sky. Sometimes the sky is pure blue. It has been a couple times this last week. Not a cloud in sight. And then I also like to look up at night to see the stars, picking out the constellations I know, all 2 of them. I look up when I hear sounds in the sky, the geese honking, and planes taking off from the airport. We live close to the airport. And I always look to see where the planes are headed, what direction, and wonder where they're going. And I send up a quick prayer for the pilots and the passengers for a safe flight. I also like to be up in a plane when I can, to travel, to see the world. I remember looking down over the Andes Mountains as I flew from Santiago, Chile to Buenos Aires. They went on forever. They were awesome and scary too. I like looking at familiar sights when I go in and out of Mitchell Airport here in Milwaukee and when I fly in and out of the airport in Aberdeen in Scotland. But the plane always lands. It doesn't stay in the sky. And that's where we need to be. We can't keep looking at the heavens. Our neck starts to hurt. We need to start looking around us here on earth. Earth under our feet, solid earth, solid ground, where we are called to be involved in ministry and mission like the disciples that day had to understand and learn that Christ was ascended, but they were still here on earth, and there was lots of ministry and mission still to do in his name as he has taught us to do. So looking up to the heavens is amazing. Having our feet on solid ground is amazing. And it always reminds me of the verse from Emily Dickinson about God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. God's in his heaven, Jesus is in heaven, all's right with the world. And that's where we are.
Looking at this text, I sympathize with the disciples. It's easy to get caught looking up to the heavens after you've worked so hard for so long. Nearly 20 years ago, I was a rookie community organizer doing work in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and Montgomery County, Maryland, working to build a brand new community organization. Every week, I would meet with 25 different people one-on-one. By this time, I had met with over 1,000 people. I cannot imagine how many phone calls I made. As an introvert, I could find this work incredibly difficult. It was a grind to pull out my list of names at 7 p.m. every night and to dial each person, hoping they would answer and hoping they would agree to meet with me. Each day, when I had a little bit of a break, I would pull into the parking lot of a 7-Eleven. I would pull out a bag of change, of quarters and dimes, and I'd call people from the payphone, again, hoping folks would answer and agree to meet with me. And the reality is it paid off. In June of 2000, working with a group of clergy and lay people from around Montgomery County, we gathered 726 people and we launched Action in Montgomery. The most powerful politician in the county not only attended but said he wanted to work with our leaders. You could feel the excitement from the crowd that evening. And I kept thinking in that moment how much easier it was going to be to do this work from this point on. We had a real organization with real recognition. And about a week later, I was in the parking lot of a National City Christian Church talking to an older, more experienced organizer. The kind of guy who looked more of the part of organizer than I ever did. His shirts were always wrinkled, his socks never matched, His tie was always loosened around the neck, looking like he was ready to come off. He filled every room he entered the second he started to speak, and he built powerful organizations with leaders who made things happen. As I was still caught in the moment of our founding convention and imagining how much easier this work would get with a new organization, I said to him with a mix of frustration and lament, "Why aren't more people calling me back immediately when I reach out to them? I figured once we had our founding convention, people would just want to meet with me." The veteran looked at me with his big smile and shook his head and said, "Mark, you have to grind away at this every single day. Making the phone calls and meeting with people never gets easier. You just have to put in the work." It turned out he was right. And change did happen again and again, and every step was intentional. In this moment, we can't coast on what we've done before. We've got to go back to the beginning. We've got to reimagine. We've got to do the work Christ has called us to do.
And for all of you who have considered your own faith during this Now What series, I'm reminded of something one of the great Christian authors, Henry Nouwen, once wrote, is that one of the chief aims of the church, and by that not just me, pastor, but you as a member of this church, as a member of the body of Christ, is to make our faith concrete and not up in the clouds. The living out of the gospel is out into the world with eyes level, finding Christ where Christ appears, in the hearts, in the eyes, in the faces, in the stories of people just like you and me. I'm fond of something Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote, that I have never once met you, nor have you ever met me, but I've only ever met Christ in one another. Friends, for Christ who shows up, and Christ who comes again. Amen.